The Shadow Clone Jutsu is relatively simple. It is a ninjutsu which allows the user to duplicate themselves. Even though it is probably the most used jutsu in all of Naruto, it is pretty odd, mainly in the complexity it allows. I really do think that this jutsu is the most versatile, and at some points, the most powerful in the series. But to properly explain this, let me recap all the rules that come with the Shadow Clone Jutsu. The Shadow Clone technique is a ninjutsu which allows the user to create sentient clones of themselves. These clones are able to do anything that the original user could do. Moving forward, let's call the original ninja the Prime. However, these clones seem to be glass cannons, as in one strong punch is enough to poof them out of existence. However, this is not always the case. Some clones can in fact stay alive even after being hit. The rules are kind of unclear here. Moreover, like any other jutsu, the effectiveness of the technique seems to be dependent on the mental focus of the user. Therefore, if the Prime were to get hit and lose focus, all the other clones would then poof away. Usually, you can only make a few clones at a time. However, there is the multiple shadow clone technique, which allows the user to create hundreds of clones at once. Those, for the most part, are the basic rules of the Shadow Clone Jutsu. But what makes this technique so innovative is two main principles: biology and information. Clone biology is very similar to regular human biology, well, regular human ninja biology, with their bodies containing their own minds and their own stamina. The main difference here is chakra. When a Prime creates a clone, their chakra pool is divided into two, giving both one half. If one more clone is created, the chakra is halved once again. Now, it's kind of unclear how this works with multiple clones. As in, if a clone makes their own clone, is the chakra divided between both of them or all three? I am going to assume only the two of them. However, if the Prime were to make several clones all at once, they would all probably share the chakra evenly. This rule is very important, as it is the main reason why many people do not use the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Other than it being a hard technique to learn, of course. If you were fighting the opponent and decided to use the technique, well, from that point forward, you only have access to half of your chakra. This fact does not seem to affect physical prowess though. Clones are just as strong as the Prime. Considering that chakra is the base of all shinobi combat, most shinobis are not comfortable handicapping themselves like that. I mean, yes, you do have another half with just as much chakra as you do, but unless you are coordinated, this could easily be turned into a disadvantage. And this isn't even mentioning the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu. At that point, your chakra would be split so thin that trying to use any technique would be impossible, especially if you have small chakra reserves. The only way to get your chakra back is to poof the clones away. This is the main reason why the Shadow Clone Jutsu is basically perfect for Naruto. From a very young age, Naruto always had massive amounts of chakra reserves, mostly coming from his Uzumaki heritage. Moreover, if needed, the Nine-Tailed Fox can gift him a never-ending pool of chakra. Unlike anyone else, Naruto can use the Shadow Clone Jutsu and the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu with very little drawbacks. However, the true strength of this technique comes from information. When the second Hokage made the technique, the main purpose was reconnaissance. What kind of reconnaissance is kind of vague, but considering that at this point in his life, he and his brother were in a war, we can probably assume that it was probably made for that purpose. To create many different clones around the battlefield, with them being able to fight together. This is where Tobirama creates the most interesting aspect of this technique, the way in which the clones share information amongst themselves. Okay, so here is something I don't completely understand yet. The way information is shared between clones can be understood in two different ways. The first is the more concrete one, reabsorbed information. As explained in Shippuden by Kakashi, the moment a clone is created, all the information the Prime knew is then given to them. However, as two different entities who could go on to accomplish different tasks, the information acquired from that moment forward will be different. It is only when the clone poofs away that the information they gained will be shared back to the Prime, in the exact same way chakra does. This is the basis of Naruto's training for the Rasen Shuriken. As in, when one clone makes a breakthrough in the technique, it is then shared with the rest, including other clones, which makes the process a lot easier. This on the surface makes sense. After all, the entire point of the technique was reconnaissance. I am assuming Tobirama envisioned the creator to create several different clones at once. They would go around the battlefield to scout for information which could then be shared back to the Prime. But there are a few drawbacks. Firstly, the use of shadow clones as training tools is not as effective as it seems. Yes, you can streamline the learning process, but only if you're Naruto. Imagine if you were a regular shinobi with regular chakra reserves who wished to use the Naruto style of learning. Well, if you use the multiple shadow clone technique, you would then hit a wall. All of you and your clones have very little chakra left. So if you wish to learn a new ninjutsu, it will be really hard to practice with barely any little chakra left. The only two ways Naruto uses the shadow clones to learn something faster are with the Rasengan and the Rasen Shuriken. But both of these techniques are, at their core, more about chakra control rather than dispensing your chakra trying to learn something new, which I assume is a lot easier to manage as you have to worry more about your control rather than how much chakra you have. It also doesn't hurt that Naruto has like a lot of chakra. But if you wish to learn something like the Fireball Jutsu, that is more about control, but also about how much chakra you have to practice with. Yes, you could limit the number of clones you have, that way you have more chakra, but depending on how big your chakra reserves are, the number of clones you can make could also be really small, which would defeat the purpose of the whole exercise. From what I understand, clones cannot share physical improvement. For example, if a clone did a push-up and poofed, the Prime would not feel stronger the next day. Another important problem with the technique is related to the Prime. When a clone poofs, all their information goes back to the Prime, or other clones, but there is no way for the Prime to poof, is there? Therefore, there is a clear block here. Clones can give information to the Prime, but the Prime cannot give info to them, or so you would think. There is a second way in which information can be shared, and it is, for a lack of a better term, telepathy. It has been shown a few times that the clones can learn what the others are doing in real time. This type of knowledge sharing is rare in the series, only happening a few times, but if it is true, it does change a few things. Mainly, it would make the technique 1,000,000 times better. The Prime can now communicate with the others effortlessly. This would allow for coordination on the battlefield to be a lot smoother. However, one big problem we do see a lot is concentration. Trying to have multiple conversations at once can be tiring, but I'm not sure to what degree. Naruto seemed to be fatigued, having multiple clones active all at once as Hokage, but I'm also going to assume the strain comes from the number of clones he has and not how long he's been doing it for. Because when Naruto made a few dozen clones in the 4th Great Ninja War, this did not seem to cause him any problems. Now that we have established the rules of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, we can now explore the many ways in which the technique could be implemented. There is the main obvious one, using it to improve a lot faster. Now, for the reasons we have explored earlier, unless you're Naruto, using this technique to learn new ninjutsu would be pretty impossible. Same with genjutsu, since it relies on ninjutsu. Now, to be fair, we did imply you could divide yourself a few times, such as 3 or 4, and learn a technique from there. But the results you get would not be as impressive as Naruto's. That being said, clones would be really good at learning taijutsu. Remember, clones can pass on knowledge. Therefore, a Prime can make a bunch of clones and make them all practice taijutsu techniques. Once one makes a breakthrough in the finesse of the move, the rest can then learn it, allowing the Prime to learn many taijutsu techniques very easily. And considering that taijutsu is not tied to chakra, the Prime doesn't have to worry about how many clones they make. You could then take this to the logical extreme, with the 8 gates. After all, the 8 gates are a separate source of power, one that needs to be trained and learned to be used properly. Therefore, it is entirely possible for a Prime to use clones to learn how to open gates. Now obviously this would be hard, as opening gates is hard in general, but with enough practice, it can be done. So theoretically, a shinobi could use the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu to learn how to open all their gates quicker. Just imagine, an army of 8 gate ninjas all hell-bent on attacking one opponent. Now I can't think of one downside. The power of the gates are directly proportional to how physically strong a user is. And remember, a clone can't pass on physical gain. Therefore, the Prime needs to actually put in some work and train hard. And if they wish to gain the same benefits as 8th Gate Guy, they need to work just as hard as he did, which means training every single day. So it's easy. The second way in which I can envision the jutsu being used is as a battery. We have seen Naruto use the clones as batteries, specifically when it comes to natural energy. When the clone poofs, the natural energy they collected is then returned to the prime. This also applies to chakra, and that fact could be really useful. There are a bunch of techniques in the ninja world which allows the user to absorb other people's chakra. The simplest version we see is the one Yorori uses. He is able to absorb other people's chakra through physical touch. There are other techniques, but you need to acquire items or elemental jutsus which are just hard to obtain realistically, and I just think Yorori's is the most easy to obtain. If a ninja obtained both of these, they could create a system. In the battlefield, the prime could make a few clones and make them go off in their own directions. Those clones have the mission to find weaker ninjas or just people they don't mind killing. The clones could then steal the chakra of the opponent or opponents. Once this happens, they should have more chakra at their disposal. They could then find their way back to the prime and poof. And this would increase the available amount of chakra that the prime can use originally. With a well-organized system and with enough available weak opponents, such as in a war, the prime could not only eliminate other opponents and maintain their chakra pool, but also increase their own chakra to higher levels. Another important application is its use in deep espionage. This makes sense, as it was made for that purpose. The ways in which espionage could be done with this technique are intriguing. There is the obvious. You could make a few dozen clones and disperse them throughout the battlefield, with them acting as a large network of spies, being able to relay information to the prime, whether it be through stalking the enemy or getting the lay of the land. But let's take it up a notch and see the ways in which this technique could be useful for reconnaissance if combined with other techniques, such as the transformation jutsu, a jutsu which almost every single genin knows. Combining them together could be a deadly duo. A prime could create several different shadow clones, enough clones so that each one could have enough chakra to use the transformation jutsu. From there, each clone could go undercover by transforming into a brand new identity. If they need to infiltrate a village, they could do so from several different avenues. One clone could go undercover as a ninja they killed, while another is undercover by being a shop clerk. With this infiltration tactic, a ninja can infiltrate any situation they want and gather as much information they need, whether it be finding a target from whom they need to infiltrate or need to kill. The main problem with this system is that clearly having several different clones that conduct several different tasks all at once could be tiring for the prime, as we have seen with Naruto. And he is basically an expert in the shadow clone technique. So if he's tired by it, then for the average ninja, it would be pretty hard. Perhaps a solution would be fewer clones and more practice, but I'm not sure. One other way this technique could be useful is combined with genjutsu to rain hell on opponents. Let's say the prime is going up against a ninja they know for a fact is stronger than them. They could use genjutsu to level the playing field, to ensure that the opponent is in a constant state of delusion. To do this, they could implement a plan that involves shadow clones and genjutsu. First, they make a few clones. 2 or 3 is enough, especially since we need each clone to have a lot of chakra. And then the clones need to disperse, but not too far away. They need to be close enough to keep a close eye on the Prime, and more importantly, the opponent. When the fight begins, the clones start their campaign of subterfuge. Every clone will activate their genjutsu, with each of them hitting different aspects of the opponent. One could target how the opponent views the location of the Prime, another could change how they view themselves, and the other could make the opponent hallucinate other opponents on the battlefield. All of these attacks should make hitting the Prime a lot harder. This doesn't even need to be fighters. Clones could stalk unsuspecting opponents with this, but these tactics only work on the more subtle level. Moreover, this plan requires a lot of planning from the Prime and the clones beforehand to make sure they all know their roles and what they're going to do. Mainly because the Prime isn't able to see the illusions that the clones are making. However, we could bypass all of this if we go with the Hellblazer plan, as in every clone creates the exact same genjutsu, which this time can be a lot more outlandish in nature. Even if the opponent finds one clone and takes them out, there would still be several other clones making the same illusion, and once one clone poofs, the others would know and plan accordingly. This several layer genjutsu would make it very hard for the opponent to get out. Those are just some of the many ways the Shadow Clone Jutsu could be used to dominate the battlefield. There are probably many other ways this could be used, but for now, let's leave it at that. If you watched to the end, thank you so much, it means a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video, it was really fun for me. And if you like it, let me know and I'll make more. Anyways, see you next time. Peace.